Patrick Crakes, Crakes Media, former Fox Sports senior executive, consultant, and of course there's always something to discuss or look at, or why hasn't something happened, or is it about to happen, or analyze what has happened when it comes to college athletics. Patrick, thank you very much as always for your time. So let's start with this, and this is really the one in the front radar, even with a lot of maybe simmering in the ACC with Florida State and the comments from Friday. What do you think we've talked about the Pac-12. What is the holdup? Is it because there's a lack of interest or because of what?
So I don't know if it's a lack of interest. I think it's a symptom of the extreme disruption that's occurring. While the old established system that was based upon pay TV, which was really produced a lot of revenue thanks to monopoly-like characteristics, and over 30 years, content costs went and followed it. You now have a new distribution system that's interrupting that, and it is not nearly as profitable. And for every genre of content on video, the content costs haven't adjusted yet. So you have a new system whose revenues are radically different than the old systems, but the content costs haven't caught up with it. As a matter of fact, content costs continue to climb, and we're beginning to see cracks in that. And some of the symbols are everything from Thursday Night Football not being validated. Nobody inside the established system wanted Thursday Night Football, so Amazon showed up and took it in an incremental way. And Major League Soccer can't get what they want from the established system, and they end up over at Apple. Well, now it's the Pac-12's turn because kind of everybody reconsolidated in college football except for them. They lost out, and they're having trouble finding the right home and the right mix of distribution and figuring out the difference between reach and economics. So it's not an easy journey to go through. Ask the regional sports networks who are also caught up in this. We're going to see more of this as we go forward, as we try to figure out this mismatch between revenue and cost. And lots of important properties could get caught up in this.
So if you're the Pac-12, what is your goal on your deal right now? Obviously, some of this can get caught up in we have to make at least as much as the Big 12 and more than the ACC or something like that. But is it more about stability than maybe your overall number at this second?
Well, I think at this point, and I'll be honest, I think what Brett did was great, but I also think Brett had this largely directionally in mind too. I think you need to get yourself settled down. You need to get some fresh economics. You need to get distribution. And then you have to get ready for the next round of consolidation, which is probably going to come in 3 to 4 years. In 3 to 4 years, this revenue cost mismatch problem will probably be on its way to being resolved one way or another. Either the revenues will figure out how to improve those. Some of the costs will be under control. Some people won't get paid as much. Maybe some people will get paid more, but the net will be less cost, and you'll have sorted out some of it. But I think it's primarily about keeping everything together, certainly not going backwards on economics now. You want to get some increase in economics and getting prepared for the future so you can play your assets the best you can.
What do you think of the idea that any potential deal could be largely streaming? I know we don't know just yet how this is going to go, obviously, but if that were to be the case, do you see that as a large negative, or do you think that that's setting them up properly for, the waves to come and then the changes to come?
I think it's hard to say that a full streaming deal at this stage in streaming development and the confusion with consumers about needing multiple services to watch multiple different types of content, while still needing, probably if you're a sports fan, an established pay TV bundle. I just think it's going to be hard for people to find you. Doesn't mean they won't know you're there. It's just they have to make now a whole series of choices. It's not just a matter of finding you. It's a matter of, well, do I want this, or do I want to use this? And look, we're insiders. And we figure all this out, and we'll spend a lot of time looking for stuff. This is one of the things that's really hard to explain as a researcher to a producer or something like that sometimes. To explain to them that the average person, even if they're a fan, is going to spend about 5 to 10 minutes looking for something, unless it's just the absolute most important thing they have to watch, you're going to lose them. And that's why reach is important, especially if you're trying to build brands. So right now, Amazon, last quarter approximately, with Rings of Power and Thursday Night Football, went from representing about 2% of all minutes consumed of video across all platforms to like 3 or 4%. To put that in context, Netflix is at 7%, YouTube proper is at 8%, and basic cable and broadcast television are at like 50 some odd percent. So Apple TV is 1%. It's still growing. So it's challenging for me to say going all in on a streaming platform is a great thing. I'll put one other statistic out there, but Thursday Night Football was a great success for Amazon. Streaming numbers on an average minute viewing basis of approximately 8 million had not been heard of. But that's still down like 35, 40% from what Fox was doing across some NFL Network and pay TV channels and broadcasts and the simulcast. That's the kind of drop. So just imagine an Oregon State, Washington State football game at 10 o'clock Eastern time in October. What that's going to do on Amazon? It's going to go down a lot. So I'm not comfortable with that at all. Doesn't mean that streaming shouldn't be a part of the equation, but you've got to work to try to find some other types of distribution, even if you've got to have 3 or 4 partners.
You were just mentioning, people looking for something and finding it. Also, we've been kind of talking about this, about how many games that you might watch kind of accidentally that would help your numbers. There's no accidents when it comes to streaming. Like you're on until you're not. And it's not, hey, we're going to take you to this game that's already in progress and you're kind of hooked into it. That doesn't happen on streaming.
No. So that old pay TV universe that everybody kind of hated, I always make this joke. It was so bad that nearly 95% of all U.S. TV homes at one point had it. That's how terrible it was. Yeah. And the beauty of it was, look, it had a lot of problems, and it was expensive, right? But you haven't seen expensive. It's everything's about to get a lot more expensive, guys. Because when everything was bundled together, you could offer things at a bundled price. Now things are getting unbundled, and we're learning that it's not the same price. And now you got to sum up all these unbundled things. But the truth of the matter is, you had everything in one place that was probably pretty much worth watching, to include sports. And this is why it works so well for it. Just like you said, Smokey, it's like for a lot of male viewers, 12 o'clock, people watch about 12 to 14 channels inside the pay TV universe. And they start at 12 and they work to 1 and 2 with their most favorite ones, looking for stuff. Most people don't come to the set even in the streaming era with this, like, I'm going to absolutely watch this. This is on it, especially with live content. They know approximately. That's why you don't promote events until 2 or 3 days out. People don't begin to really they know it's there, but they don't need the exact information until they get closer to the event. And unlike a college football Saturday, the organic nature of pay TV, because everything's connected, and I used to call this circulation, and I likened it to a heart pumping blood through a body. You go to watch a game, you find it, because the electronic programming guide's up there. The sports channels are mostly around. Sometimes they're grouped in maybe 2 places, right? Like Big Ten Network will be down maybe on DirecTV in the 600s, right? But you kind of know where you're going, right? And then you find something, and just like you said, you find other stuff organically as you flip around. And a lot of the viewing inside pay TV is driven by that circulation. People stumbling across content they want to watch. Content discovery inside the pay TV system was infinitely easier than it is outside of it. Matter of fact, content discovery is a strategic problem for the media business in the streaming era, even if all your content's inside one place. So you're exactly right. And we underestimate, especially for sports, especially for football, college football, how important that circulation is inside the pay TV system, because college football is large and broad and kind of spread out all over the place. Pay TV does that really well. College basketball too. And streaming, you're exactly right. You're there with your 1 game or your 2 games, and then you're done. And now good luck. You're back on scavenger hunt looking for things. It's a problem.
Patrick, with the Pac-12, have they been cornered in any way with having the one window of opportunity, with all the other conferences filling the TV slots, and then also on top of that losing what appears to be the LA market?
Yeah, I think when we talked, when everything first went, a month or 2 after everything first kind of got going, when UCLA and USC, split, The Pac-12. I felt like the time to do something like extending your deal or trying to find other partners. Doing some expansion on your own. That was the time to do it. And I salute Brett for doing that with the Big 12. He kind of, he had great advisors, and my friend Karen Brodkin at Endeavor. And, they're like, we got to do this now. We need to get stabilized. We need to lock ourselves down and get ready for what is going to be the next shift, because expansion's kind of over, right? Once he concluded that. I would have liked the Pac-12 to have done the same thing. But I also understand why they didn't. Like, their deal was expiring, and it seemed like it made sense. It's awful easy to play Monday morning quarterback. These decisions aren't easy, guys. And the ground ship's right underneath you all the time. And but now they are caught a little bit in the crosshairs. And how they put this together, I still think they'll have an opportunity to do it. But they, in my opinion, if I were advising them, I'd be aggressively going back to the networks and finding out what I can get, even if that means I've got to cut 3 to 4 deals with different entities to get enough combination of reach and economics to keep myself in place to get ready for the next stage of consolidation, because the Pac-12 has fantastic assets. But they've got to be stable for the next couple of years to be able to take advantage of that in the next great kind of consolidation realignment, which is coming in 3 to 5 years.
As part of that, whatever is going to happen with the ACC, in spite of their seemingly infinite contract on the grant of rights, because Florida State and Clemson are making noise, and they're upset about their place in this. And they've seen what Texas and Oklahoma have done. They've seen what USC and UCLA have done, and they know that UCF is making more money than them now. And they're, South Carolina is making more money, and Florida's making more money than them, and that just doesn't sit well.
Yeah, I think that the ACC will be a part of all of that. I think that ESPN has a vested interest in trying to figure that out. And that's why it's good to be partnered with ESPN. In some ways, Fox has what they need. What they're looking for is a piece of the college football playoff, right? ESPN has, a great asset in the ACC. They know that those folks are going to want more money before the end of that term of that contract, right? And look, you got the terms of the contract, but sometimes reality changes the nature of that contract, and you need to find a way to help your partners build value. So the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are opportunities to do things with the ACC, I think. And quite frankly, in my opinion, something like that probably should have been done. But it wasn't the right time. There was too much displacement and only so much economics to be pulled out of the distribution system, primarily because of that disruption I'm talking about. We need some of that to come together, right? We need to figure out what role the streamers are really going to have. One of the problems that the Pac-12 is having right now, and anybody would have right now, is that Amazon and even Apple have figured out that they don't have to compete for anybody for these rights. The established media companies take what they want. And the stuff that they don't want or need, they're not going to pay for anymore. And so there's nobody to outbid, right? It's like, here's the offer. And I know people think that those two entities, Amazon and Apple, have all this money. Well, obviously they do, but they didn't get that money by just doing dumb deals. They have no obligation to bail out the media business. That doesn't mean they don't want the asset. So that's the problem that's kind of working its way right now for the Pac-12. Neither one of those entities, my understanding is, wants to stamp up with 100% of the value that the Pac-12 really thinks they should get. And so, yeah, I think in 3 to 5 years, you will see the ACC probably restructure itself as part of that. But what will be interesting is that their partnership with ESPN provides an opportunity for somebody like the Pac-12 and the Big 12 to be a part of that. And the nature of the distribution system is going to change a lot over the next couple of years. And being positioned with ESPN is probably a great thing. So that would be somebody, if I'm the Pac-12, would be trying to figure out how to do a deal with, even if it doesn't get to the value I promised the conference president, the CEO. I would, you've got to, it's now time to figure out your deal and who you want to be aligned with in the next round of consolidation. And economics are still very important, but again, going all in with a streamer who's still experimenting and is, has a lot of risk attached to that, and I don't like it for other reasons too. So I think it's part of the solution, but they've got to figure out a larger solution with other partners. And yeah, at some point the ACC is probably an option for realignment somehow, but I don't think that's going to happen today. Right now, they got to get a deal done.
So, Patrick, you mentioned some of it there, but just to be clear, when you talk about consolidation, because you mentioned it a couple of times now here in the next few years, I think we all realize, like, hey, the Big 12 signed a relatively short deal that lines up with others. You know, they're opening up at the same time. So could you dive just a little bit further into what you mean by that looming, I don't know if you'd call it a threat or not, but probably a threat for some as far as that consolidation piece goes?
Well, look, there's a lot of great assets that are still not consolidated properly to take advantage of maximizing opportunities in the distribution system. The distribution system only has so much money in it. And the current round of realignment, I use consolidation because it's kind of a financial term, but it's really, in some ways, if you guys think about it, the exact same thing. That kind of got tapped out. That's why I was saying publicly, that we were done with, there wasn't going to be any grand deal for Notre Dame to join anybody. The system couldn't process it yet. But, in 3 to 5 years, the system may very well be able to process it. We're going to get through the college football playoff. That's a big thing. And once that expansion and negotiation for distribution is done, and we have the new format set and the new partner set, it'll be time for, I think, probably some pieces to move. And I think there will be maybe some conferences will join together. Maybe some conferences will rejuggle themselves. The ones that probably won't will be the Big Ten and the SEC. So it's the Pac-12, the Big 12, and probably the ACC and Notre Dame. And how everybody ends up dancing together, what every conference looks like after that, could be radically different. A lot of it just depends on whether you can stabilize the revenue side of this new system to compensate for this declining revenue side on the old system.
Patrick, the equal or unequal revenue sharing, obviously Florida State's barking, Clemson, North Carolina, perhaps even Virginia. We know about what the Big 12 has been through on and off, and then even the thoughts about what Oregon and Washington may want to stay together in the Pac-12, if in fact that's true, that, okay, we want more if this is going to hold together, or less if they join the Big 10. Does that solidify, or is that just a matter of time, like termites within a conference, unequal revenue sharing?
Well, in the short run, that may be a solution. I think it's going to be hard to figure out. And what it really harkens to, guys, is something that people really don't want to hear. And that is the concept of a college football super league, where the top 25 or 30 college football programs play in their own special league. And they still maintain their conference alignments for other sports, perhaps. But when it comes to college football, they're their own thing. And that Super League concept comes from Europe, where for years they've been trying to get the best soccer clubs out of each one of these. They play in the Champions League. There's a European Championship. But there's been talk for years that the Manchester Uniteds and the Real Madrid can form their own league outside of UEFA and FIFA and make an infinitely more money than they do today. And so that revenue sharing idea lends itself to the idea of a super league, which I have to be honest with you, I think is a real possibility in 10 years. So it's just, you can maybe get stability for the conferences in the midterm, but I do think there's a real possibility that somebody will just say, there's so much money here if Michigan plays Florida State every year, and they just do the Super League, that's where we're going, for the reasons why you guys cited with the unequal revenue share.
Wouldn't that discount the regionality appeal, though, of college football? I mean, that's what
they don't care, Paul.
Yeah, but I mean, but doesn't they may not care, but that might hurt them in the overall. I mean, that's why the European Super League didn't work out, is because they kind of discounted the fact that people in England like playing people in England.
Well, so first of all, we could do this on a different show, guys, but Super League's going to happen in Europe. Yeah. That didn't stop it. That just delayed it. In reality, it will be very popular. But yes, your point's well taken, Smokey. I don't think anything can stop it. The money's going to be too big, and people are going to love it. And the regionality won't matter because it's 30 teams. We talk a lot about regionality in college football, the traditions and everything else. They'll preserve enough of that because college football is not some kind of niche sport. It's general market. And so many of the fans of college football already didn't go to these universities, and they live all over the place. And just the amount of money is going to be so big if distribution comes together that having the top 30 college football teams in the United States in one league playing against only each other every year, as a concept, right? How you work that out in the details, there may be some way for the Indianas of the world, my alma mater, to be a part of that on some occasions. But the truth of the matter is that it's going to just make too much sense too, because I don't have to tell anybody there that football is not a sport that really in college everybody can just like. It takes more than 2 or 3 players to get better. College basketball is a place where if you have 2 or 3 good players, you can be around a 16 team, around an 18 for a couple of years, but football is not one. And I just don't think that's going to stop it. What's going to incentivize it is the economics will be there, and instead of doing uneven revenue sharing and watching Florida State steamroll, 7 of the teams in their conference every year, they'll just have Florida State go play the Michigans and USCs every year.
If, in fact, that Super League in 8, 10, 12, whatever that is, what happens to those who are locked in, like Vanderbilt and others who are smaller programs who have always in that conference, is that they may not like each other, but they always have protected everybody, their neighbors next door?
Yeah. I think that probably, and there's a lot of details to be worked out, obviously, but my knee-jerk to that is that they would continue to play football just against themselves. So if there's 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten, 4 teams in the Big Ten, for example, that would go to Super League for college football only, they'd still play all the other sports in conference together, including basketball. And then, the Indianas of the world and the Northwesterns of the world would still play football against each other. And maybe the college football playoff has a way for those teams to get into it. But I just think that there's probably going to be a giant incentive for the top 5 teams in the SEC, the top 4 teams in the Big Ten, the Big 12, Pac-12, whatever those conferences look like, ACC, et cetera, to play each other in their own conference. And the economics for that, especially if other sports, their economics are reduced because of kind of this change I was talking about. If we're going to start in video sports, right, we're going to start obeying more extreme power laws, which is basically says, everybody, it's why podcasting Joe Rogan makes money, but nobody else does. If that's what's going to happen in video sports, then college football has every incentive to be just underneath the NFL, and that's the way to do it.
Pat, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. Pat Crakes, former Fox Sports executive, and also with Pat Crakes' media consultant agency. And I see some of